Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our vegetable garden in Spokane, Washington. The hardiness zone here ranges from 5B to 6A. You'll recall that a couple of weeks ago I shot a full-length video on planting a fall garden, and I had all kinds of tips to share with you. But at the time it was way too warm for me to be planting my fall crops. Well, the temperatures have finally dropped to a more reasonable level, and that's what I'm going to do today. You'll recall that I've dedicated two of our raised beds for our fall garden. In the first bed, I'm growing Cascadia snap peas, Batavian full heart endive, giant winter spinach, and green jewel pack choi. In that bed, I added some organic composted chicken manure because all of those crops will benefit from extra nitrogen. In the other bed, I'm growing root crops. So those are Chantenay short stuff carrots, purple plum radishes, cylindrical beets, and Mikado baby turnips. And in that bed, I incorporated some bone meal because that's high in phosphorus and that will promote the root growth that I'm after. Now for the root crop bed, I'm making 4 planting trenches. The first thing I'm going to plant is the radishes. And amazingly enough, for these tiny seeds, they actually get covered by 1/2 inch of soil, and they should be spaced a couple of inches apart. This will probably be more radishes than we can eat, but they're always so nice. Now I need to cover in this trench, and don't worry, once all of the seeds are planted, I will water this bed thoroughly. And don't forget to label your planting, so if something doesn't come up, you'll know what it is. Next up are the beets. You'll notice the seeds are actually clusters of seeds, but that is perfectly normal, and the great news is you don't have to separate them out. So I'm planting them about 2 inches apart, and they will be covered with 1/2 inch of soil. Now, one of the things that's really important to remember is that once those seedlings are about 3 inches tall, you want to thin them to about a spacing of 4 inches, and that's to help the roots have plenty of room to develop. Now I'm going to plant the turnip seeds, and you can see they're quite small, but they still get planted 1/2 inch deep, and I'll use the same spacing of about 2 inches apart. They are really hard to see, so I'm probably going to have to do a bit of thinning later. But these are really reliable turnips, and you can just eat them raw. They are so crunchy and flavorful. And they're great steamed with sage leaves. Now check out how little the carrot seeds are. They are going to be planted at a depth of 1/4 inch, and I'll try to aim for about 1 inch spacing, but this is another one that once the plants reach about 3 inches in height, you want to space them about 3 inches apart because you really want to leave room for those roots. The next step is to water everything in thoroughly because you want the seeds to make good contact with the soil so you get great germination. Now I have a special tip to share with you to get great carrot germination. They are notoriously slow to germinate, and sometimes they can be very spotty in their germination. So I'm going to show you that next. The last 2 times that I've planted carrots, I've used the burlap method, and that's where I cover the soil surface with burlap after I've watered everything in. I pin it down so it doesn't blow off, and that keeps the soil moist longer, and so you get better germination. You just leave it in place for about a week to 10 days, and then you take it off. Well, in this case, I'm only growing 1 row of corn, and that creates a bit of a dilemma. Fortunately, I have another method for getting carrots to germinate well, And that is what's called the board method, or at least that's what I call it. And that's where, once you've watered everything in, you cover the row with just some scraps of board. It serves the same purpose, to keep the soil moist. And you leave it on for a week to 10 days. Then you take it off, and then hopefully you'll be getting great germination after that. Now I have one more thing to do. I'm hoping you don't have this problem as well, but just in case you do, I thought it would help to talk about it. So we have a lot of California quail, which are birds, in our garden, and they love nibbling on freshly sprouted seeds. I'm sure they must taste delicious. Well, I want to protect my little seedlings while they're small because they won't be able to fend for themselves yet. We also have a wild cottontail rabbit that is on our property. I've never seen any damage from it within the vegetable garden, fingers crossed, but they do love to nibble on the clover in our lawn. So I want to protect the seedlings from that as well. So I've put some hoops over the bed, and then I'm going to use either some agricultural insect netting or some floating row cover. I haven't gotten it out yet. But that will be weighted down around the perimeter so it doesn't blow off. And that's one of those out of sight, out of mind things that hopefully the birds and Mr. Rabbit don't know about. This is my other fall garden bed, and one of the things I'm planting are these Cascadia snap peas that I started indoors a couple of weeks ago. They definitely are ready to come out into the garden. But the thing is, I'm going to plant this bed a little bit non-traditionally. You would expect that because I'm growing 4 crops, I'm going to do 4 long rows this way. Well, I am going to do some long rows, but because the peas will not eventually need any protection, I'm going to plant them crosswise in this bed. Everything else that I'm growing in here will need some protection. The spinach is going to need protection from leaf miners, and those are flies that will lay eggs on the leaves. Those eggs hatch into maggots, yuck, and tunnel through the leaves, just totally ruin them. So that's going to need protection. The lettuce is going to need protection from the birds, possibly the rabbit, and the pak choi is going to need protection from cabbage worms. Now, being later in the season, I think there will be less insect problems, which is always a nice benefit. But I wanted to get the peas in first, and then that will tell me how much room I have for the rows of the other crops. The pea seedlings will be planted roughly 2 inches apart, and the packet says that they will grow 30 inches tall and will not require support. You know, I've fallen for that before, and more often than not, they'll fall together in a heap. So what I'm going to do is closely watch how the seedlings are doing, knowing that I have supports just a few feet away from the bed, and I can grab them to get them back on track. So I pre-punched some holes with my dibble, which is also known as a dibber. And I'm using a slot screwdriver to carefully lift the seedlings out of their cells. And then I'm just popping them into the planting holes. I'll firm them up once I have everything planted. Okay, so the peas are all in, and I should also comment on the fact that Bill and I decided we could plant the rows a little bit closer together than the recommendation on the packet, just with the thought that perhaps that would help them support each other better as they grew. We shall see if that was a good idea or not. Now I want to plant the pak choi seedlings that I started indoors. Next up are the Batavian Full Heart endive seeds. And they are super easy to grow, but incredibly cold hardy. I've grown them through the winter in our hoop house without the use of any supplemental heat, and they do great. And they get covered with a 1/4 inch of soil. Always press them down so they make good contact. Now I'm going to plant the giant winter spinach. It also gets planted at a 1/4 inch depth. And I'm putting them in at about 2-inch spacing. I'll see how they get going and probably need to thin them to about 4-inch spacing. And last but not least, I'm going to put in some Bower lettuce. That is my all-time favorite reliable leaf lettuce. And we'll see how it does this fall. These ones are pelleted seeds. So yeah, they're a larger type of a seed. And seed suppliers do that primarily to make the seeds easier to handle than tiny little ones. What's next? Yep, watering everything in. I just put some tall, heavy-duty row cover hoops on the bed. We made them with electrical metal tubing. And now I need to go get some agricultural insect netting and row cover for the carrot bed. Boy, the trouble I have to go to protect my crops from the wildlife around here. But I've got the agricultural insect netting on, and it's weighted down around the edges so it won't blow off. I'm going to go put some row cover on the other bed, and that's it. I just get to sit back and watch them grow. I'll provide updates every so often. I hope you're going to grow a fall garden and that you found this helpful. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening.